Sudan is Africa's largest country geographically. There is a war there that is the longest war in this century. 2 million people are dead. There are more dead there than in Bosnia, but you don't see it. There are more dead there than in Somalia or in all the Gulf wars, but you don't see it. It's a religious war. It's a holy war. The Arab-Muslim North has decided, when there was a coup in 1989, the Islamic fundamentalists of the Arab North in Khartoum have decided to impose Islam on the rest of black Africa underneath them. It's a self-declared jihad. As part of that war, Arab militias armed by the government of Sudan storm African villages. They shoot the men, they take the women and children. These are either kept by the individual soldiers or they're marched north. They're sold. Some of them, according to State Department documents, some are sold into Libya. Others are sold around the Persian Gulf. They become concubines and wives. They are forcibly converted to Islam. The girls who were chosen to be concubines are genitally mutilated to fit within the new culture of their master. Here's just a few stories. Abu Thuk Akwar is a 13-year-old girl from the New York Times, who along with 24 other children was captured by the militia, marched north, and given to a farmer. Quote, throughout the day, she worked in his sorghum fields, and at night in his bed. During the march, she was raped and called a black donkey. That was the UN investigator in 1990. She escaped with the help of the master's jealous wife. Khan is a 13-year-old boy who was abducted by Arab nomads and taken to a merchant's house where he found several Dinka men. The Dinka, by the way, are the tribe in South Sudan who are the victims of this. You know Manute Bol, the basketball? He's a Dinka. The Dinka are 7 foot, 8 foot, tall, beautiful people. They are the ones who are being preyed upon. And their army, the Dinka army of South Sudan, the SPLA, the Sudan People's Liberation Army, all by itself is holding off the power of that world against it. And if I weren't a human rights fella, I'd be collecting money for them. Okay. He saw several Dinka men hobbling because their Achilles tendons were cut because they refused to become Muslims. Threatened with the same treatment, the boy converted. Then he escaped. Slaves caught fleeing are often castrated or branded. Now, how did I find this out? This is a strange thing. How did I find this out? You might have just been hearing about this lately, but I found this out 6 years ago. I'm a management consultant, as Pastor Singleton told you. I had lunch one day with a man from Senegal. His office was in Senegal. And I had read a tiny little article about this, you know, the kind that's so tiny that you say, you know, it says by its tininess this doesn't matter. But it said you can buy and sell people for $100. So I asked the man from Senegal, can you buy and sell people for $100? He said, much less. I said, is there slavery around that? He says, it's all over. He said, can I come? I said, can I come and just buy one so I can put it on? He said, sure. So, what do you mean sure? What do you mean sure? The next thing I did is I called my congressman, Barney Frank, Boston. I'm from Boston. I said, I don't believe this. The man, he said, do research. I called Amnesty International. Amnesty International next week sent me a package this thick, their report on slavery in the north of Africa. They know. That's as bad as the slavery, that they know. It's in the back of their files. The United Nations knows. The State Department knows. It's all there. It's a sin. I was getting angry. This was a scandal as big as the slavery that they knew. Open secret. I became determined, my wife would tell you, obsessed to do something. Now why? You know, people say, why? I don't understand that question. I don't understand that question. I grew up in the civil rights movement. I was born in Newark, New Jersey. I grew up in the civil rights movement. I went to the March on Washington. I heard those words. They were like a thunderbolt. I thought I was in Mount Sinai. In college, I was an anti-war activist. I thought Americans protest things they don't like, that are wrong. Don't Americans do that? I'm an American. America tore itself apart over the issue of one man owning another. If we are nothing if not abolitionists, what else are we? And finally, as Chuck told you, I am the descendant of Hebrew slaves. We know the Pharaoh. We are commanded to set people free. I don't know how many of you ever went to or invited to a Passover Seder, but I give you an invitation. Every year, the descendants of Hebrew slaves are commanded to sit around a table and try to reenact what it's like to be a slave. And so we eat bitter herbs and we cry. And then it says, you are commanded to free the captives. So I don't know when people say, why? I found some Sudanese and Mauritanian people in Washington, D.C., and I got together with them. A man's name is Mohammed Atiye. He's a Mauritanian Muslim. He's a black Muslim from Mauritania. And he and I and a man named David, whose last name I don't want to say because he's in a serious situation in his country. The three of us, a Muslim, a Jew, and a Christian, we made a deal. We would not rest until we got this to national attention. If we were younger kids, we might have cut our fingers and done a blood thing, you know. But now it's here, it's taken 6 years. It's taken 6 years. We were naive. We thought all we had to do was tell the story and people come running. That's what we thought. We thought we would rekindle the anti-apartheid movement by getting together black leaders, women's groups, church groups, human rights organizations, because, you know, apartheid is very terrible, horrible. Slavery's a tad worse. Is freedom worth more in Johannesburg than it is in Khartoum? I don't think so. So we sent letters and documents and photographs and document packages. And we were shocked that we were mostly ignored, or worse, attacked. For example, I testified in front of Congress. You know, you make me more nervous than that. I don't know why. No, I'm feeling good now. I'm feeling good. You know, they sent a guy from the State Department. We were telling about Mauritanian slavery. And we had all the documentation, even State Department documentation. They sent a man from the State Department that said there's only vestiges of slavery in Mauritania. This was that a year before, their own document said there was 90,000 slaves. We know there's 10 times that many, but okay, 90,000 slaves. What happened from a year before there was 90,000 and now there's only vestiges? Did we miss the Emancipation Party? Were there 90,000 chains dropped to the desert floor that we didn't hear? Politics of slavery. Serious. There are some people out there that they do not wish to offend. When our leaders ignored us, we decided, we were depressed at first, but we decided on a new strategy: we shall undercome. If they won't listen to us, we'll just have to light a fire under their feet, and we did. And we published in the New York Times, in the Boston Globe, and the Los Angeles Times just a couple of weeks ago, in the Reader's Digest. We're on Marie Claire. We're on the cover of Marie Claire right now, the women's magazine. Okay. We put out our newsletter. We were publishing over 200 black papers too. We put out our newsletter, which I invite you. It's at page 2, big article. Reverend Singleton joins our board. Thank you, Reverend Singleton. Okay. We got some journalists to cover the story. There are 4 nationally known journalists now syndicated across the country following our every step. Clarence Page, for one. He just wrote one in the Chicago Tribune. Okay. We got Dateline, NBC, to fly to Sudan and film the purchase of black children. We got the NAACP to write a resolution. Now let me stop here for explain the 3 rules of the politics of slavery. Because I was shocked. I thought I'd just hold this up and people would just come to us. I was shocked. 3 rules of the politics of slavery. Number 1, when I look at this crowd, you are the optical opposite of Amnesty International. They got all white people with a few blacks. Okay. Now, white human rights people are very good, but their primary motivation, as I have discovered, is to improve the conduct of white people. So when they look, right, no, it's good. That's a good thing. That is a good thing. It doesn't go far enough. It's a good thing. When they look at apartheid and they see white people doing bad things, they're furious. Not with my skin, you don't. I'm not you. I'm going to show the world I'm like that. And they help smash apartheid. And that was wonderful. That's good. That's good. But there are no bad white guys who are taking slaves in Sudan and Mauritania. That's the problem. If there was white guys taking slaves in Sudan and Mauritania, Amnesty International would have this at the top of the chart, not in the back of the file. Right? Okay. Number 2, no one wants to offend the Arab world or Islam. We are not against the Arab world and Islam. I have 3 Muslims on my board. There are one of the best articles we ever wrote was written by an Arab Muslim from Khartoum, the university, and he documented the first slave raids ever documented. We're against slavery, but people are afraid to offend. By saying that this happens, people are afraid. That's rule 2. Number 3, until very recently, black leaders had no constituency underneath them pushing them forward. Now, 1 and 2 is hard to deal with, but 3 we can deal with. You got matches, you know how to light fires. There's one exception to the rule, and that is that there is a Christian movement that Chuck was telling you before, a Christian movement that's very concerned about the plight of Christians in the Middle East and under the Arab rule, because from Egypt to Sudan and in Pakistan and in Iran and in Iraq, the rise of Islamic fundamentalism has meant that Christians are in deep trouble. So there is a Christian movement. Pat Robertson, by the way, is very interested in this. I was on his show 3 times. There is a Christian, but nobody cares about the slaves in Mauritania. Black Muslim slaves. Nobody cares about the slaves in Mauritania. So that's why it's very important for you to come Thursday, because you're going to meet a slave from Mauritania who thinks that you have abandoned him. And you're going to come there on Thursday and you're going to tell him you are free. Okay. Now, we worked and grinded for 6 years. I debated people. I've been on television. Not just me. There's a bunch of 4 or 5 real strong activists. A very important person is your pastor, because he went with us to Washington, D.C., and he spoke at a national press conference that we held there in 1996, and that opened up the way. That he was the pioneer. He opened up the way for other black leaders who were kind of like, what are we going to do with this? He was there first, and don't forget that. And now God is smiling on us, and we broke through, and they can't put this thing back in the bottle, and we are delivering a massive 3-punch hit. The first one, an angel from God came, and her name is Barbara Vogel, and you might have seen this on television. It was on Dan Rather, it was on the news. Barbara Vogel's a 5th grade teacher. Well, I'm going to be quiet and let Dan Rather tell you. Just let's a couple of minute tape here.
Tonight we conclude our special CBS News series on modern-day slavery. Last night we took you to Sudan, where children captured in war are turned into slaves and where a group calling itself Christian Solidarity International is buying back their freedom. Tonight, we're going to show you the power behind that group. CBS's Jacqueline Adams reports on American children learning about freedom by struggling for it against the slave trade.
Half a world away from Africa's Sudan,
Add all the money at your table.
in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains,
We got the green.
children at Highline Community School outside Denver are trying to right a wrong.
That's a lot. 77, 78, 79.
The counting and calculating in Barbara Vogel's fourth grade math class add up to freedom
Look at how the decimal points are lined up.
for women and children forced into slavery in Sudan.
Cindy, where did that $5 come from?
Allowance.
By dipping into their own pockets and appealing to strangers, Vogel's students have raised more than $70,000 over the last year. The money has freed over 1,000 slaves. Freedom bought at an average of $50 to $100 per person.
I felt heartbroken that it was going on, and I thought it ended like 200-300 years ago.
Lessons about America's slave past got students interested in an article about modern slavery in Sudan.
The very first thing that they said, it was ingrained in my mind, was, what are we going to do about this?
They contacted John Eibner's Swiss-based human rights campaign, which deals with slave traders.
Children have been raising money in their schools
to set the slaves in Sudan free.
Last Tuesday, the kids watched CBS News footage of Eibner's most recent transaction.
At this point, they do not know that they are free.
Wide-eyed, disbelieving, they saw their money transformed into stacks of Sudanese bills.
900,000. That's 1 million.
And freedom for slaves, some their own age.
The letters that you write, the pennies you put in the jar, this is what it does.
They don't have to be beat, starved, raped. They can go home with their families and have fun and be loved and cared for.
In civil war-torn Sudan, slave raids are used as a weapon of terror. And some say buying slaves back creates an incentive for more abduction and more suffering.
No matter how complex the politics in Sudan, the children here in Colorado are determined to live the lessons they've learned. Their battle against slavery, they say, is the right thing to do.
Money isn't only the solution. The solution is like awareness.
We'll be right back.
On this, the American View Radio Network.
That means taking their message to a broad audience.
Nobody has the rights to take freedom away from them.
Remember your favorite teacher.
They've also appeared on television. Vogel students have written thousands of letters to celebrities and politicians and to ordinary Americans who've answered their call.
I'm so sorry I can't send more, but I am a window washer.
The powerful have been less responsive.
Some of them, they're just saying, well, we can't do anything about it because there's a war going on. But if we're the powerhouse of the world, why can't we?
Where politicians are failing, these kids believe they are succeeding.
So you are a politician.
Politician isn't the word, sort of abolitionist, more like it.
Big word.
It means to people who help free slaves.
Goodbye, good night, my little abolitionists.
This is Jacqueline Adams in Aurora, Colorado.